Thanks, Brian, for giving us that update on where we stand with regard to our finances and our commitment to making sure that we have a strong home base. The second half of our meeting last night focused on our mission and vision, and it was kind of a little more exciting, you might say. Not to say, Brian, your part wasn't exciting, but I always love talking about how God is on the move and working through us. And for some time now, we've been using this language of our mission as leading people to a full life in Christ. And just having that language has been so helpful for us to ask the question, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How does it help lead people to a full life in Christ? And we're continually asking that question and using that language so that we all make sure we're on the same page for why Jesus has us here at this time, in this community, in this world, at a time when the world so desperately needs what we have in abundance, the love and the mercy, the grace, the peace, the abundance of life in Jesus Christ. The last couple of years, we've also been using this kind of language to talk about our vision. That is, where is Jesus pointing us in the years to come? And the language we use is that we want to reach people no one else is reaching by doing things that nobody else is doing. And what that means is we're looking always for opportunities to step into places where there is no vibrant ministry and are willing to explore new ways to express the gospel, connect with people, and then lead them closer to Jesus. And one thing I said last night that I want to make sure I say to all of you today as well is this church has been so gracious and courageous in the last several years to try to embrace this idea and given a lot of freedom and bandwidth to me and to other staff and leaders to try stuff, to explore new programs, new worship styles and opportunities. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who calls St. Peter home for your courage and your excitement at this vision that God has given us. In the last year or so, we've been talking about this big dream that God has planted in the hearts of our leaders. I know for some people, this makes you a little bit anxious. Just the thought of starting 10 new things in the next 10 years seems out of reach, seems way too ambitious. And what you've heard me say before, and I want to remind you of today, is on our own, this is unattainable. But as we've been thinking and praying and planning for this as a leadership team, we've become convinced that Jesus is calling us to something greater than ourselves, something we could never achieve on our own. But with his help, we believe he's calling us to take on this big goal. And so what we've said is to do that, we need to make sure that a few things are in line so that we can take on that kind of challenge responsibly. And so for the last year or so, we've been talking about these kind of 4 key areas in the next 2 or 3 years that we're going to be focusing on. And I'm going to focus on just one in particular, the first one. We set a goal as a board and a leadership team to say we think that Jesus is calling us to do the first one of these 10 and 10 by the end of 2018. So a little more than a year from now, we believe that God is calling us to plan and prepare and act on one big new thing as a congregation. To do that, we know we need to have a strong leadership pipeline. Men and women in staff and volunteer roles who are ready to take on this extra responsibility. We need to make sure, as Brian was just talking about, that our home base is strong, and we believe that it is and is increasingly strong. And we also need to make sure that we are in tune as a congregation to joining Jesus on his mission. That's been a kind of mantra around here for the last couple of years, and in January we're going to be coming back to that in particular. But I want to talk to you and share with you an update on the first one. What we've said over the last couple of years is we feel that Jesus is calling us in 2 directions when it comes to these 10 things. One of them is somewhere just north of us. And what leads us to that conviction is the observation that there's a gap, a hole in the map north of Lake Cook Road in Buffalo Grove and all the way up to Vernon Hills and Libertyville, kind of to the east of Hawthorne Woods, where we have another LCMS church, St. Matthew. And we've been praying about and looking for the right opportunity to enter into that area. As of yet, there doesn't seem to be a clear path forward, but there is on the second front that we've been talking about, and that is back in the city of Chicago. A few months ago, the district president, Dan Gilbert, reached out to us and said, Micah, we've been talking for a few years now about partnerships between suburban churches and urban churches. I want to know if you're serious about that. I said, yeah, we've been praying about that, planning for that, waiting for the right opportunity to open up. He says, tell you what, I've got a church. It's on the west side of the city of Chicago, and we were just approached by the rest of the congregation that's left, just a few individuals who have been fighting hard to keep the church open and in good shape, and they've done a tremendous job of that, even though there's just a handful of them left. And they approached the district and said, we think we're done. And we want to know what's next. We don't have the energy to put up this church that we love for sale. Is there another option? He said, tell you what, there are these churches out in the suburbs that are thinking that it may be time for them to get back into the city and help restart a vibrant ministry in some of these places that, for whatever reason, just haven't been able to make that happen. Would you be open to a conversation with one of them? And the members of that church said, yeah, that sounds good. And so within a week, I was down there with Brian and with Mike Graff, chairman of our board, just to explore what's this place even like. And it's located, as you can see here, on the west side of the city of Chicago in what's called the Belmont neighborhood, Belmont Central, Belmont Cragen, you may know, right next to a park called Reese Park. The name of the congregation is Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. Here's a bird's eye view of the campus. There's a church and a school building and a gymnasium that have been kept in remarkable shape. Here's a picture of the gym. There you can see a picture of the church. And the members that are left have just done an amazing job of taking care of this place, and they've got great pride in it. And we're so thankful for their faithfulness. What we're doing now is some of the background work, the demographics, the crime statistics, the facility needs, and we believe that unless we come into a big red stoplight, this might be our first one. And the idea is that we would take possession of it sometime in the new year, develop a strategy for starting a new child care or early childhood ministry, and then build a new congregation out of that. We're still a lot of planning to do. How's that going to impact my work, Brian's work, Bruce Rudy, our principal's work here at St. Peter? We need to oversee some of what's going on there while still maintaining most of our time and attention here in Arlington Heights. So you're going to hear more about that in the weeks and the months to come. And sometime in the new year, we'll bring this to you as a congregation, tell you the story, share the plan in as much detail as we can. And then, God willing, ask you to affirm the decision to make this our first one. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be, but we're excited that just like we've been asking for and talking about and praying for, God is opening up doors for us. Now, closer to home, in the next year, or this year, we're focusing especially on relationships and community, starting new next step groups. A few just started last weekend, a few more to come. We're going to look to start more life groups in the first part of next year. We're going to look to call another full-time pastor to specifically focus in on this area. If things go the way we're hoping, it looks like we'll be in a position to do that in January of next year. More community events to create relationship opportunities and upgrading things to create a more welcoming atmosphere. So pastoral vacancy, as I said, that's a top priority right now. The Joining Jesus focus is going to come back to the kind of primary attention in January. And the last thing we talked about is taking our 11 o'clock contemporary service and doing some experimentation with it by moving it for a period of time, for 3 months, into the Life Center starting in January to try out some things that we've learned in Encounter but can apply to that service. And focus it especially on middle school, high school age kids, young adults, and others who love contemporary worship and want to see that thrive and grow here at St. Peter. So you're going to hear more about that in the weeks that are to come. And just want to thank you for your ongoing support and engagement. And Jesus is truly busy and on the move here in Arlington Heights, the Chicagoland region, and across the world. And it's a great time to be in ministry with him.